Welcome to the Habitz Podcast. On today's episode, we've got Stephen Hull from Inopera Facades talking to us about creating beautiful buildings. So Stephen, what qualifies you as our guest expert when it comes to creating beautiful buildings?
Hi Mike. Well, I've been in the facade industry for 14 years, worked for several manufacturers before I set up on my own. I've worked on over 100 projects up and down the UK, and we're passionate for it. We're passionate about what we do.
So what are some of the things that you see people get wrong when it does come to this type of construction?
Well, our industry is quite disjointed. So if you imagine there's a multitude of different manufacturers all trying to sell into the market, a multitude of different finishes, fixings, whatever it is, and none of them talk to each other. So often the people that are effectively buying or specifying those materials don't have a consistent level of information. And the industry's full of salespeople trying to generate numbers rather than necessarily look at what architects and designers are trying to achieve, and telling them from the outset whether or not what they want to achieve is actually achievable with either the budget or the constraints that they have for their scheme.
So would this be the builders just going, we can do that cheaper, or we can do that, who would?
Yeah, I mean, it's multifaceted. So you have variant stages of a project, from the designer right through to the builders. Those builders might be specialist contractors, they might be general builders. And then you've got different suppliers in the mix as well. And yeah, price is obviously key. But it may start a project, you might have a cost put into a project early on that's unachievable or unrealistic by the time it actually gets to site, whether that be from changes in procurement process or material costs going up, or the design the cost is based on having no reflection to what is actually being built or trying to be built on site.
So is that why you see, say, some big projects? So I'm an Everton fan now.
Yeah.
What they were quoted the stadium would cost and what they're now projecting it will cost is like hundreds of millions difference.
Yeah.
How can they get it so wrong?
Well, how can they get it wrong is there's lots of differentiating factors, but generally it comes down to estimating costs. And if you estimate the cost on general costs, then it's always going to go wrong. So if you estimate that your cost of concrete, for example, is £100 a tonne, and it ends up it's going to cost £300 a tonne when you come to build it, or you need more structural steel to hold up part of the stadium, and that's not allowed for in the cost plan. When it comes to site and you start trying to add it in, it's where it goes wrong. So it's not detailed enough, but then it's hard to justify going into too much detail before a project is either put out to tender or given the green light to go and get built. Which is probably why Everton's stadium's still made of timber.
Well, me and Goodison?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the same stadium. But what I always find mad though is I always think sometimes that people quote these low prices just to win the business. I mean, the reality, they know they're never going to be able to deliver at that price. Do you think that's an issue?
Well, a fairly prominent case of that would be Carillion, who quoted work achieving near on zero to small percentage of margins in order to keep the cash flow coming into the business then to fund the next project, which you're going to get found out. Yes, there are, from general builder right the way up to kind of more specialist buildings that we get involved in, there's always going to be a cheap price. But if the contractor or the people that you're dealing with or the clients are looking at 4 or 5 different prices and try and understand the spectrum, then you've got more chance of stopping that from happening. But Carillion were a big example of it because they were quite reliant on government backed projects. So they thought they could just carry on doing that, where obviously music stopped. Yeah.
So what are some of your good habits then when it comes to creating beautiful buildings?
Oh, good habits. Well, one thing we try to do is to understand, or at least provide an idea of project-specific costing. And what I mean by that is we've developed over the last 3 or 4 years a bit of software that helps us to do that. So if an architect, for example, wants to put stone on the outside of his building, and his quantity surveyor is telling him he's only got the money to put metal on the outside of his building, then we can give him the cost disparity between the two, but based on not just the stone, but all the bits behind it and all the bits that they need to meet the performance regulations for that project, whether it be a housing project or school building or whatever it might be. So we get into that habit early on, and the earlier we're engaged, the earlier we can put that information forward. We try and be as honest as we can right from the outset. I think that's a really good trait to have in construction, because a lot of our competition will issue a price, but it's not a qualified price.
Yeah.
So, for example, issue a price of £50 a square metre, but what they don't tell you is you're going to need to order 50% more material to do the job, meaning you've got a 50% price increase on that £50.
Yeah.
So we try and be upfront, and another good habit is that if we can't do the job or we can't get to where the client wants a price, we'll tell them.
So really, I suppose transparency,
Yeah.
honesty,
Yeah.
being as upfront as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose that's key to any business, not just in construction, really.
But more so now, in a time where I think from just the economy in general is going to come back to similar levels where it was in, let's say, 2008, where jobs are more competitive because more people are going after them because there's effectively a reduction in work. I think it becomes more prominent to be more honest or provide more information to those people that are considering either using our materials or some of our partners' materials, so that they don't get it wrong later down the line.
Yeah.
There's going to be more scrutiny on projects, more scrutiny on costs. So we want to be forward in providing that information rather than holding something back or going to market with a price that we know is not achievable.
So say if I was now looking for, and I was putting a project out there and people are going to be tendering for it, so what would my process be now, do you think? What should I be looking for from people that have tendered for this business? What would you recommend to sort of safeguard me from being ripped off or falling victim to any of those things?
In the arena that we deal in, they're not kind of like domestic projects. They're more kind of contractual led projects. So a set number of tendering contractors, so 4 or 5 maybe, to give cost transparency, having a good bill of quantities that you're working towards. Not all jobs have them, but having that understanding in the first instance, a broad brush of, we need 400 square metres of this or 500 of this, is a better start than going out to market saying, here's all the drawings, and almost those 5 people will all have their own take on what those drawings mean.
What's needed.
Yeah, so they might take them off differently, they might miss something out, they might qualify something or not qualify something. So have a pack of information that's as consistent as it can be to all those parties, and then I guess look at choosing then the supply chain.
The app that you guys have created, how would that help your customers or clients?
The app's designed to simplify the process, basically. We have, from architects through to builders on site can effectively use it to get a better understanding of what the construction is that they're planning to build, what it's going to cost for each element combined in one. So they don't have to necessarily go to 4 or 5 different manufacturers to get one answer.
Yeah.
They can just come to us, get one answer, and then verify it with the market.
So that we're giving them the pricing on the materials, how much they need?
Yeah. So the idea is, typically with a facade, you've got the outer material stone, metal, whatever it is. You've then got a carrier system to hold it on the wall, insulation to meet all the kind of building regulations and requirements, and then it could be built onto concrete, steel, brick, depending on what type of building it is. And we'll effectively price all those elements throughout the construction, but base it on the project parameters. So, for example, if you're building a 2-story office building like we're in now, what you need and the number of what you need is very different if you're building a 15-story building.
Yeah.
So we understand the project location, the building heights, the loads and stresses potentially required to hold those elements on the wall, and then we quantify it in a overall price, and then give the option of the individual price elements to the tendering parties that can then come and buy it from us, or they can buy it through partners in the industry.
Also, they could go to all different suppliers if they wanted to.
Potentially, yeah. But effectively, we understand how it all goes together, and the more we can supply ourselves, obviously the better. But we understand that there are different ways of procuring materials. What we're trying to do is help either the architect or designer make an informed decision with better data, and help the contractors later down the line who are trying to tender these jobs. And bear in mind, you might have 5 tendering contractors, but they might be tendering 50 different projects at the same time.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is make that a quicker turnaround. The price might not always be exactly, as accurate as it potentially can be, but that's something that we have to hone. But it's better, and it's a time saver that they can go out and get more done, and we can price more projects quicker and faster.
So if I wanted to find out more about the app and what you guys are up to, where can I find you?
Come find me on LinkedIn, Stephen Hill, quite easy to find, although no beard on the profile picture.
You do look different in real life.
Yeah. Better or?
Different.
Good, yeah.
Different.
I'll take that. Or inoperafacades.com, or our Instagram. Have a look at some projects that we're working on.
So thanks to Stephen for joining us in the Habitz Podcast. If you've got any good habits when it comes to creating beautiful buildings, let us know in the usual places, and join us next time for some more habits.